It was February 1942, and the great city of London had gone dark. Her windows had been painted black, and the streetlights were smothered. The once vibrant and beautiful city had descended into darkness. The proud citizens had succumbed to a state of fear as the Luftwaffe carried out their relentless raids. They would take refuge in cellars and public air raid shelters as the bombs fell upon the proud capital. However, the citizens had much more than the bombs to fear. Over the course of 6 days, a poison would carve its way through the shadowed London streets. That poison was Gordon Frederick Cummins, also known as the Blackout Ripper.
Police have captured a man whom they believe to be the son of Sam.
This is regarding a mass suicide, and I can give you the address.
They called themselves the Family. They came and went, and the number varied from 20 to 30.
Gordon Frederick Cummins was born February 18th, 1914 in the small village of New Earswick in Northern Yorkshire. A lot of his early life has never been disclosed, which has led many to speculate on whether it was nature or nurture that had turned him into a killer. What is known is that he was frequently reprimanded and even fired from his early occupations due to his arrogance and his dishonesty. At the age of 23, Gordon Cummins had begun his life as a loving and doting husband to a theatre producer's secretary. By all accounts, Gordon should have had a rather prosperous and self-fulfilling life from this point on. However, there was a rotting in his core. Enlisting into the Royal Air Force in 1939 as a leading aircraftsman, Gordon had earned himself the nickname of the Count. He had claimed that he was an illegitimate child of noble heritage. This claim, however, has never been verified, and due to his previous notoriety of dishonesty, it is widely believed that this was just a boastful claim. At some point early in his military career, he had decided he wanted more of a thrill, so he had volunteered to be a part of the aircrew where he was posted to Regent's Park for his initial training. The course would run from the 2nd to the 25th of February. Within these 23 days, Gordon Cummins would leave behind a violent legacy. On Saturday the 8th of February, Gordon Cummins went home to spend time with his wife. After borrowing some money for a night out on the town, he made his way into the West End of London. That night, and many nights to follow under the sequential cover of darkness, Gordon Cummins would become the Blackout Ripper. On Sunday the 9th of February, the body of Evelyn Hamilton had been discovered in an air raid shelter in Montague Place. She had been strangled and a handbag containing around £80 had been stolen. Apart from the strangulation marks, Evelyn's body had not been mutilated, nor were there any signs of sexual assault pre- or post-mortem. Judging from the crime scene at the time, it would have appeared as a mugging gone wrong. This was the start of Gordon's killing spree. On Monday the 10th of February, the body of 35-year-old Evelyn Oatley, who also went by the name of Nita Ward, was found naked in her flat in Wardour Street. Due to the harsh times of the war, she had turned to prostitution to survive. She had been strangled, her throat had been cut, and she had been sexually mutilated with a can opener. On Tuesday, the 11th of February, Margaret Florence Lowe, who'd also gone by the name of Pearl, was murdered in her flat in Gosfield Street. She was another woman who tried to make her living as a prostitute, and she had been strangled with her own silk stockings. Her body had been horrifically mutilated with a knife and a razor blade. Her corpse would not be discovered until 3 days later. The pathologist Bernard Spilsbury stated that the murderer must have been a savage sexual maniac. On Wednesday, the 12th of February, Doris Jouannet, who'd also gone by the name of Doris Robson, was murdered in her ground floor flat in Paddington. She had been strangled with her own scarf, and her body was put through the same tortures as the previous victims. On Friday the 14th of February, Greta Haywood was attacked in a doorway near Piccadilly Circus. Surprisingly enough, she actually knew her attacker due to her previously rejecting his sexual advances. During the attack, a delivery boy making his rounds saw the assault taking place, which caused Gordon to flee the scene and make a fatal mistake. Not only had Miss Haywood recognized her attacker, but Gordon had also left behind his gas mask container, which had his service number of 525987. Later that night, most likely due to a bruised ego and not willing to control his urges, Gordon attacked another prostitute. Miss Mulcahy, who also went by the name of Kathleen King, was attacked in her flat near Paddington railway station. However, this wasn't Gordon's night, as she fought him off and once again he fled the scene, leaving an extra £5 and his belt. This was the end of the killing spree, with the city lights smothered and taking his moment in perpetual darkness. Gordon Cummins hunted like a true sexual predator. About 2 days after the assault on Greta Haywood and Miss Mulcahy, the police arrested Gordon Cummins in St. John's Wood. After a subjugated search of his quarters, the authorities found a staggering amount of evidence linking him to the murders. With this and the fingerprints found at the previous crime scenes, the noose had already begun to tighten. On April the 27th, Gordon Cummins was put on trial for the murder of Evelyn Oatley at the Old Bailey. In only 35 minutes, the jury had found Mr. Cummins guilty of murder due to the overwhelming evidence against him. He was sentenced to death by hanging and transported to Wandsworth Prison, where he would spend the last of his days. On June 25th, Gordon Cummins was put to death, and in the ultimate act of irony, he was hung during an air raid. During the regular nighttime blackouts, Gordon Cummins stalked the London streets like a bloodthirsty animal. It has been speculated, due to the need to keep high morale within the country, many of the details of Gordon's life and crimes were simply brushed under the carpet. With his death on June 25th, his final body count would be a total of 4. However, there are many reports that Miss Oatley was not his first. Shortly after his execution, another body was linked to him, a Miss Church. Although details of her murder have not been released, it is stated that her death occurred sometime in October of 1941. This was 4 months before the horrific killing spree. Either way, the Blackout Ripper took advantage of the bloodiest time in British history, and his legacy will not soon be forgotten. I would like to thank you all very much for watching. I was actually planning on documenting a serial killer for this episode. However, upon discovering the Blackout Ripper case, I found it incredibly interesting. Now, you may have noticed I've genuinely stuck to crimes and atrocities from the early 20th century, and I do plan to do 2 more videos around this time period. I do have my sights on a few serial killers of this era, and I'm on the hunt for a cult of this time period also. Once they are finished, I do plan to move into the 1950s up to the 1980s, where I shall cover the events of people like Wu Bum Kun and countless serial killers and cults of the time. I do imagine that that era of videos may go on much longer than this current one due to the amount of killers and cults that happened during that time, but I do still plan to find more obscure subjects to share with you. And of course, I'm sure I'll circle back round to the 1900s at a much later date. I would also like to say I now have a Discord and Twitter, which I have linked in the description, where you can come hang out and see a sneak peek of upcoming episodes. And again, thank you all very much for watching. All of you have been very supportive for such a young channel, and it's been highly appreciated. If you wish to see more, please like and subscribe. I've been Mr. Blank, and you've been watching Beyond the Dark.